What's up, everyone, and welcome to the DC Studios Showcase, the official podcast. I'm nerd commentator, Fantastic Frankie, but you guys can call me just Frankie Smith.
I'm Tyler Coates, entertainment journalist.
And welcome to episode 3.
That's right.
We got 3 in here of this showcase, the official podcast. It's presented by Max.
Yep.
This show will be deconstructing and celebrating all things DC Studios. Each episode will be joined by our comic correspondent and comic book expert, Coy Jandreau.
Howdy, howdy.
Oh, that's nice. And today's episode, we have a great one for you. I'm finally going to break down quickly the DCU. For not just Tyler, but for anyone who's DC curious. We are going to be joined today by Sean Gunn, and he will talk everything GI Robot and Weasel, but also he'll break down episode 5 and 6 of Creature Commandos with us. And finally, we're going to have Coy do what Coy does best.
I'm so excited. Reading comics are my favorite thing, second only to talking about comics with people that might not know them. So this gives you half a year to read some good stuff that I think have inspired James Gunn's take on Superman.
What if Sean Gunn comes on and is like, wrong?
Where
did you get that idea from?
Arts correction. That's actually no. He hates that book.
What if he's like, yeah, he's like, who's this guy? Who's this hack you guys?
Who is he to tell me what my brother likes in Superman?
All right, Tyler.
Yeah.
It's time that you learn everything about the DCU.
I really don't know anything.
Let's start off at the beginning. You know who James Gunn and
I do know who James Gunn
Safran
is. Yes, yeah, and
Yes.
Peter Safran. Yeah.
Okay, so that's beautiful. These two men are the creative spearhead of what we'll be calling the DC universe.
Okay.
So this is the first time that DC has its own studio, which is beautifully named DC Studios. So the brand itself has a studio where they could create all the content they want, movies, TV shows, things like that. Make sense?
Yeah, totally.
There is just one cohesive universe that will be under the watchful eye of James Gunn and Peter Safran, right?
Okay.
Now, this is relatively new.
Okay, yeah.
Stick with me. I'm going to cook for a second. This is relatively new. But there are 2 projects that happened before this year that will be included in the DCU. The first one is The Suicide Squad,
yeah.
which you've seen, right?
Yes, yeah.
The next one is Peacemaker. Have you seen Peacemaker?
I've seen parts of it, not the whole thing.
Parts of it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Peacemaker is so much fun, and that is a continuation of The Suicide Squad. Okay, so when we're thinking of timeline, The Suicide Squad is first.
Yeah.
Peacemaker is second.
Okay.
Got it, right?
Yeah.
Next,
That's easy.
That's easy, right? We talked about this when we talked about Creature Commandos.
Yeah.
But Peacemaker kind of jumps off the events for Creature Commandos, right? The world finds out about Amanda Waller and what she's doing, and so she has to find alternative means to create the Task Force X, and that's why she's doing the Creature Commandos. She's using monsters, right?
Right.
I know it's hip to be a superhero these days, but your resume doesn't exactly back up the Glenda the Good Witch routine.
So as of right now, these are the 3 things that are in the DCU.
And that's it? Because there's a lot of other things.
For right now.
Okay.
For right now. That's it.
Okay.
There's going to be so much more that comes on after. You can't call yourself a civilian. You have too much knowledge. It's a burden.
I know. That is the responsibility that I bear.
That's the responsibility. Now that you're up to date, we got to talk about Creature Commandos.
Yeah.
So we just got up to episode 5 and 6.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
I love Frankenstein kind of generally on this show. He's not the Frankenstein I know personally.
Okay.
First of all, I'm kind of curious how Frankenstein...
Like the origins of Frankenstein?
Yeah, how did Frankenstein get into DC?
So Frankenstein is a canonical DC comic character, and in the comics, Frankenstein is much more of a traditional hero, and he's actually even got a catchphrase, he emerges and is something undone, and he basically has this I must complete something. He's always trying to finish the cycle, but he's more altruistic in a monster way. But Eric Frankenstein, this is the first appearance of Eric Frankenstein. There's never been this version of the character ever. Does that make sense?
So Frankenstein famously is the scientist.
Exactly.
So this is Eric.
Which I think is the joke. Because we always say,
Yeah.
it's not the monster, it's Frankenstein's monster.
It's Frankenstein's
Here,
monster.
he's neither. He's Eric.
He's Eric.
Oh, sure.
He's Eric Frankenstein. But I think it's funny that you're saying that he's normally a hero because here he's quite literally a villain. Like he's terrible.
When he's a leader in the comic book. So I think it's a good distinction to have him called Eric to really separate altogether that it's not the Frankenstein that you know, and it's not even the Frankenstein from the comic books, because like Frankenstein Agent of Shade, which is the run I'd recommend, it's the closest to it. It's written by Jeff Lemire. That's still going to be a more leader kind of like rallying his troops, going to take him into battle. Frankenstein, which is not this guy.
This Frankenstein, I don't even think is a leader, right?
No.
Right? Even in this episode where he's interacting with Rick, I felt like Rick was taking the lead.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's sort of like kind of low-key teaching Frankenstein about the world and consent. And
Consent is a big
is
thing.
sexy. But I mean, I think that's also where the humor. I mean, I think that's why he's like, it's complicated character because a lot of the humor comes from the fact that he just like doesn't understand social cues.
And also the voice acting made
David
Frankenstein.
Harbour.
Every delivery, I was like, I kind of like this guy. But I love that in the script, James Gunn made sure that maybe he knew how lovable David Harbour would be. I'm not quite sure, but he made sure that even if we started to like him in his relationship with Rick, that we remembered he's terrible. Right. Like I don't know.
Like, what is the biggest indicator for you?
That he was terrible?
Yeah.
I think when they showed him kind of meeting that older woman and her like opening up her home and bringing him in and then him killing her.
Yeah.
I feel like that was like, oh yeah, this guy
Fair.
is there.
That's pretty shitty thing to do.
Yeah, there's a reminder. And this is after we saw him stalk the bride for a couple episodes. So I was like, he's not
But
that
there
great.
is a nature versus nurture conversation to be had, I think, about Frankenstein too, because like he was made to be this person, like literally made.
The bride was also made by the same man, and she's chilling.
There's an interesting way that he's being portrayed here where he's always at an 11. Like all of his emotions are like, you're my best friend. Like there's no building of an arc of emotion. It's either like we hate each other, we love each other. And I think that's really fascinating that like there's a snap between emotion. He loves so passionately, he hates so passionately, he has to solve this problem. So I think there's also a conversation of like intelligence in the verbosity of his speech versus emotional intelligence, which is none. And I think it's a really fun character to play because he's so verbose and he's got this great vernacular and he's so capable. But then when it comes to actually socializing or being around anyone else, it's like, I kill or love you. And that's so cool as a character that's clearly the antagonist in this use.
And then I think that's why his relationship with Rick was so interesting because he came in here with a hard press, right? Like he was ready to kill Rick over another girl. And I think that's interesting that Rick almost died over Princess Ilana with Frankenstein, because that's also his motivations to investigate that professor and Cersei.
Well, you mentioned Clayface.
Yes.
Who I didn't know.
You didn't know Clayface.
I didn't know. Shocker. Surprise. Another character I didn't know.
I thought he might have been big enough in the cultural zeitgeist that you would have had some exposure.
I could see him not.
Yeah.
You'd like him. He's an actor.
Okay.
He's an actor, and he's a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
His origins shift, but I think what's important with that Clayface reveal was that Cersei and the person who validated her claim was not who she said she was. She was an impersonator. My question is, did Rick Flag kind of come up on that because he didn't trust Cersei or because he got the buns earlier?
I'm going the latter. I feel
go
like
for the
he's
buns.
got,
Yeah. He's like, you can't clap my girl. I just slept with her.
Right.
He loves her. Like he is clouded.
I would think that a man of his looks and stature would take more to like get whipped. I was
Since
shocked.
episode 1, the looks of Frank Grillo's Rick Flag have been
think
a
that
through
it's
line of like,
important.
you know, the way the man looks.
Yeah.
I think that it's important because why would they draw him like that?
Right.
If they didn't want us to like harp on it.
He's not good
episode.
looking. He's just drawn that way.
He's just. I mean, also Frank Grillo.
I mean, yeah, and he knows what he's
Built
playing.
that way, yeah.
But they have a really brutal fight, Clayface and Rick Flag
Yeah.
Sr. And again, the fight choreography, the sound design in these episodes are insane.
And I want to speak on two things in that fight. The first being the actual moment we see the human element of Rick Flag being a man amongst monsters.
Yeah.
We are pretty used to in comic book movies everyone being super powered or even the humans being like super powered. I love that there's actually a devastating, like, we don't know how this goes from here because of fighting a metahuman. This guy's a trained military. He's strong. He's yoked. He's handsome. But if you fight a Clayface, there's going to be consequences, which I like that they showed early on, like in the DC universe, that there's already, like, humans should not be dabbling with monsters. Right. And I also really think it's interesting that we've seen another example of mixed media. That Xbox screen was an Xbox screen. We literally saw a video game in an animated show, and now we've seen live action. We've seen Zac Efron on the phone. We've seen a lot of different media in this, and I keep thinking about this kicking off the DCU. We know later on we get live action. We know we see Frank Grillo in live action. We also know later on we get CGI and puppets and all these things. I'm really curious when you look out at the DC universe, is it going to feel like mixed media all the time? Are we going to see animation in a live action movie? Are we going to see animated characters mixing into video games? Like, this is kind of an unprecedented intermingling of medias. And the fact that Xbox was pure Xbox is pretty unique.
Yeah. But let's move on to episode 6, because there was a lot that happened in it as well.
Yeah.
This was the first origin story episode we got where I was like, yeah, he deserves to be in that bunker that they had him in.
Dr. Phosphorus, you mean.
Dr.
Yeah.
Phosphorus, yes. So we get his backstory, we learn. And I think next to the Weasel episode, this was one that really impacted me emotionally, where I was like, whoa, they are going hard with these storylines.
Yeah.
What did you think about it?
No, I mean, he's someone I didn't really know much about until this show. So again, like, all my information I'm getting along with you.
So he's a Batman villain traditionally.
Right,
And
yeah.
I was wondering if you still felt connected to him before, like, because I feel like the writing is so strong even before his flashback, but I can't unknow my Batman connection.
Yeah.
Right.
Was it
yeah.
a character that was captivating to you without context?
Yeah, I mean, I just like the look of him. And again, like we've talked about this, Alan Tudyk is like
He's
so
so good,
So
yeah.
like, I think that like, I've just been taken by just the visuals of the show and like
Yeah.
how he presents himself. I think it's just like just the design is really impressive to me.
I agree. I
Yeah.
think something about that fight that he had with Rick Flag Sr. in
Yeah.
the premiere kind of endeared me, because I felt like I was watching siblings fight. And so when I saw that he was actually a villain, and it wasn't like he was a villain where I was like he was getting revenge or something. Well, he was, but
Yeah.
I don't know. He was pretty terrible.
The way they use his power is so differently violent. The show's so violent, but it's fascinating that in a show of hyperviolence, there are moments where you're like, oh, too much. And like him phasing through stuff and just brutally mutilating things, even a hyperviolent world feels like a lot. And I really like that in this episode, his flashback, the transitions were this incredibly painful juxtaposition of the joy of being a father versus the violence of being a crime boss. And he basically went from like what he found joy in, love, to what he found joy in, hate and money. It was such a really, like, the swings were so aggressive. This was one of my favorite transitions where they would cut between like him in that pimp suit twirling around and then him playing with his kid. Like, you felt all of that. And to me, this episode, like you said, this guy is a villain through and through,
Yeah.
but you feel so much that like he murdered that mafia guy's kids. How do you forgive that? But then Alan Tudyk makes him likable. It's such a great morality gray.
And I think that's the whole thing. They're all a little bit morally gray.
Right.
And I think it's lightened up by us seeing the blossoming friendship between Nina and the bride.
Yeah.
They've been kind of coupled up this entire season. And I really like knowing that the bride is I don't want to call her a victim, but, she's been stalked and she's been running for a long time. And to see her interact with Nina, who's like inherently good,
Yeah.
try to soften her up.
I mean, even just like calm her down.
Yeah, calm her
like just like
down.
keep her in one place and like not like feel like she's always on the run.
She's grounding too.
Yeah.
I when I was watching Nina, I thought of you, Tyler. I was like, Nina's our Tyler.
Oh.
Like they're doing all these superhero things and these like they're interacting with this like fantastical world, and Nina is just sitting there in a very polite way saying like, what the fuck is going on? How could you just like fight someone or murder someone? And I think she's there to check the bride. And I love when they go into the brothel because the bride is someone who's experienced trauma and domestic violence, and her first instinct is to be violent to these women who are in the brothel.
Oh my God, you're crazy. You're always so hyperbolically violent. You need therapy.
I was glad they checked her. They was like, girl.
It's this learned behavior because,
they read her.
It's the patriarchy. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's bad.
Why you bring that here to our space? I don't understand. And I loved her. I really loved seeing that. And I love that fight scene that they had.
Yeah.
In the brothel. Coy, what did you think about
I think the show's done a really good job of humanizing everyone episode to episode, even beyond what you think you could feel for them. And I feel like their bond is kind of an anchor point for us. We've got Rick Flag as the human element that anchors us as an eyeline, but their friendship is what's kind of humanizing them as monsters that can show love, because the bride's so reluctant to show love. And I feel like that's so human. Like when you don't want to like someone, you're like, no, they're not getting to me. They're not breaking under my skin. I love that the bride is our most stoic, and Nina's finding her way to like humanize the bride and make her open up and make her available. And I really think that pairing is kind of the opposite of Dr. Phosphorus. The Dr. Phosphorus character, he becomes a shell that's radiating out energy that doesn't let anyone in. And then we're seeing that crack in the bride through Nina. And I think the episode was paired very intentionally because I said at the beginning, the graphic novel feel of opening with the team, and then each episode we get to dive deeper into these characters. This feels like an issue that is his flashback, but it really has us uncover a lot about the bride while we're doing it.
Softy.
It's because I was saving you again, idiot.
Because you are, my friend.
Get over yourself, fish.
Yeah, I agree. And this is actually Batman's first appearance in the DCU.
Oh.
This is the DCU.
Alive. We briefly saw him on a skewer in episode
Oh, yeah. In episode 1. I love that reference. You're right. I love that reference that we saw in the Dr. Phosphorus flashback when he got...
I was so happy to see the cape and just like, oh, it's Batman. 'Cause that's how Batman feels. He's everywhere.
I feel like we can dive just a little bit deeper into this episode. So we have a special guest here today, Sean Gunn. Okay, he's an actor. He played Weasel in the live-action Suicide Squad, and he's also playing it in Creature Commandos, and he's also playing GI Robot. So let's bring him out here.
Come on.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hello.
welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is very cool.
Well, we've watched Creature Commandos, and we were like, we have to get Sean in. You obviously have, at least for me, it's obvious to me you have fan favorites.
I mean, I have twice the roles. That's for sure. But I love both these characters. I love both Weasel and GI Robot, and obviously, Weasel had been with me for a little while because I played Weasel in the Suicide Squad. It's not a different version; it's the same version, but it's like it's kind of a 180 from what we experienced with Weasel in that movie. So it's been great, and I love GI Robot, love playing him. So
Did you know about the Creature Commandos before the show dropped?
No, I never know about stuff like that. I first heard of them when my brother James told me about it and said, and it was something he was really excited about. He's like, I got this really cool thing, and it's going to be really funny. But it almost seemed like an afterthought a little bit when he was first describing it. And then he sent me the scripts, and I was just blown away. I was like, I've read a vast majority of things that my brother's written, certainly everything that's been produced. But I was like, this might be my favorite thing James has written. And sincerely, I love it. And he seems to agree. So it's, it's cool. It's
You're
been
in
a
good
great
company. I mean, do you go back to like the comics, the source material to learn about these characters, or you kind of rely on James's writing?
I rely, we all on this show, we really rely heavily on what James is going for, because he's so fastidious about every single thing that he wants. So with these characters, I went back, the Weasel comic book references are not really relevant to the Weasel that we're portraying in this DC universe. It's funny, but it's not. In the comic books, Weasel's just like a dude who's like it's really bizarre. And this Weasel is not that. GI Robot, I look back for visual reference on what he looked like, and I did a little bit of digging through some of the comics that he was in, but it's always more relevant to me to talk to James, and sort of he'll tell me what I should look at and what direction I should be going. And really for GI Robot, he's so self-explanatory that it was kind of, he's got this one primary focus, which for an actor it's wonderful to just have, like, hey, your
motivation.
Yeah, what's your motivation? You only have one.
Exactly.
And so it was really just kind of about finding the voice and finding where the voice lives in my body, so that I could, so that then I can play within that range.
This is a debate we all had about GI Robot. Does he have a sense of humor? Like, does he have personality?
Here's what I love about GI Robot, all right, is that he is a robot, right? So we associate an actual robot, an actual automaton is not. He's programmed with only responses, so there's nothing in there. But when we flash back to his story and we see him with his friends in Easy Company, and that's why Cheers to the Tin Man is so important, is that when they toast him and he's there and they kind of close up on him, it's like it feels good to him. For me playing the character, it's fun to imagine that it was like unsettling to feel something.
Right.
To be like, oh, I didn't know. So it's almost like he's not quite Pinocchio. He's not turned into a human. He's not there yet. But it's like there's a couple of drops in there of, like, there's something on the road to humanity inside of him. And playing with that as the end margin of the envelope that I'm working in, to me is like really super exciting.
When you said that's what a Nazi would say at the end, I was like, that's a joke. But you're saying it's just his programming, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's intentionally funny, but maybe there's a little wiggle room there in terms of being enjoying himself.
Right.
Like, he understands that things feel good. So there's something in there, because taking out Nazis is another thing. It just, like, it's his motivation, but it also kind of like, ooh, kind of feels right. you know?
Yeah.
It's
like-
satisfying for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are these Nazis, General?
Yeah, GI. These are Nazis.
Oh.
Obviously, you're playing two characters, but they're both non-human characters. One's basically nonverbal. But I'm very curious, we're not seeing you, but how does, like, even acting as a voice actor, how does the physicality play a role in figuring out who those people are?
Need to make sure my voice is warmed up and that my body is capable of doing everything that it needs to do to create the sounds. With Weasel, it was particularly challenging for this stuff, because when we did Weasel's episode, Chasing Squirrels, that whole sequence in the last, like, 5 minutes or whatever of the episode, we tried to do that a couple times all in one long take, so that I was kind of experiencing it and doing all of the sounds and everything all at once, which really took it out of me. It's like it's hard to maintain that kind of emotional connection to something without having any words to cling on to. Doing it all from somewhere in my chest and in my head, and it was interesting. But when I'm in the booth, I tend to rock back and forth a lot and just stay active and move into things and stuff like that. But it's wild.
Weasel's flashbacks, one of the most gut-wrenching experiences I've had in any medium of any superhero comic adaptation. It really wrecked me existentially. And you and I once spoke about how full Weasel's story was, but it was like a year ago at a MegaCon. You told me Weasel's story is very full and you were excited. How long has that flashback been seed planted? Did you know that was his origin back in the Suicide Squad? How long has this tapestry been woven?
If I'm remembering correctly, I knew when we were shooting Suicide Squad that Weasel had not actually killed all those children. So I knew that when they were describing that about him, that it was false. I didn't know the entirety of the backstory, I don't think, till maybe shortly after we shot. I feel like when James first talked to me about Creature Commandos, he definitely told me by then what the whole story was of Weasel's backstory, and it's so heartbreaking. But the other thing James and I talked a lot about with Weasel is that Weasel is like a dog, right? He's he's big and he's human sized and he's strong, but he really is just like a big dog. And for people who have and love dogs, you know very well that dogs have a full range of, emotions. They feel fear, and they get joyful, and they get depressed, and they get all of the things that that humans experience, maybe to a lesser degree. Weasel, it's just like I have a smaller set of tools in my toolkit, but I'm still doing the job of trying to convey something truthful about what this character is feeling and what's going on, which is really a trip.
Yeah. Are those limitations exciting? Like the challenge of that?
Yeah, it's hard. When I first talked to James about doing Creature Commandos, I was a little bit like, because I thought it might just be Weasel, and I was a little like, ugh. It's just a lot of like grunting and whining and wailing, and like, you'd never know it, but I'm like a Shakespearean trained actor, so I'm like not even just one word,
You feel
like
the Shakespeare in Weasel.
Yeah.
I mean, which character would you compare Weasel to in the Shakespeare
From
canon?
Shakespeare? Oh my
Yeah.
Lord. Oh my God, I don't know. Probably somebody like Puck or something like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, so at first I was kind of like, I don't know. And then he very quickly was like, there's another role I also want you to play. And he speaks. And I'm like, yes, great. And he speaks. It's awesome. Still be CGI if he was live action, but that's okay. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, this should be cool. It's a robot and a weasel. But then again, I read the scripts and I was so all in. I was like, oh, I'll do whatever it takes to make this project work.
When GI Robot, do we say died or destroyed? Was destroyed?
I mean, that's the debate that we keep having.
To me, I felt GI Robot like I wanted to be friends with him. Like he didn't just need Nina; he could also have Frankie. You know what I mean? But when he was destroyed, I was so sad. So you were able to emote and make us fall in love with it.
GI.
Friend Nina, we fought Nazis together, you and I.
Yes.
It is. Oh, what a beautiful day. Cheers for the timber.
Well, thank you. I as I said, I love GI Robot. I'll let you decide what his fate there is. I won't comment too much on that. But when I started working on the character, I was kind of like, I don't want to be a typical robot. I didn't want to imitate any other robots that I'd seen or heard, and I just tried to think like, okay, so this inventor is programming him back at the time. What is he going to use as his template for the voice? And I started listening to old newsreels, like news on the march kind of things.
Yeah.
And hello in 1944, and just listening to that and then finding where that lived in my body. And then I don't have to, I'm not imitating anymore. I just I just have to do my own version of it. And then from then on, I just need to find where it lives in my vocal range, basically.
What was your inspiration for the Weasel sounds then?
Watching weasels on YouTube. and again,
deep research.
It's the same type of thing. Nobody's ever going to be like, that's not really what weasels sound like.
You'd be surprised.
Because, well, they will. Yeah,
Yeah,
they might. But the thing is, I don't care.
Right.
It's not, for me, it's like, I listen to some weasels making sounds on YouTube, and to me it was like, and it kind of sounded like that, but I don't need to imitate them.
Right.
I just need to do my own version of it, and then and then make that real, because anybody who comes after me, it's like, I'm sorry, guys, it's fictional character, you know? It's like, it's not, there aren't real.
But you are setting a bar.
It's not
pretty
real
high.
human-sized weasel. So I just need to kind of find what is fun to do. I do and then be able to live within it. And then having that as that's now the scope. That's what I make these sounds. I have this range of sounds. And then starting from there, I play it like any other character. You're just, like I'm trying to live the emotional reality and the truth of everything that's going on.
How does it look in a script? Like, do you have dialogue? Like, does it say in all caps Weasel and then just exactly
Like written in the script?
Yeah, or is it kind of just like scene direction?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much all stage direction type stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it may say that he shrieks or screams or something like that, but it just basically describes what he's doing. And then when I get in the booth, it's like, okay, we need some effort here, maybe some longing, maybe some, you know, it's always fun to be in the booth and have them say, all right, Sean, if you don't mind, we need some longer, slower licks when Weasel is licking himself.
Do you think Weasel cleans himself? We were talking about it.
He does.
earlier.
We see him.
Yeah, we literally
we see him do it.
I still think he stinks, though. I don't know if it's the way he's drawn. You think he smells good, or?
No, I do not. I do not think Weasel smells good. But, you know, he's got a lot to clean. I mean, imagine if, like, you know.
We
like,
all manage it.
Cats clean themselves pretty well, but, like, if they were human-sized, it'd be a lot.
Yeah,
I
they
feel
spend
like
all day doing it.
I feel like cats would figure it out, though. Like,
Well,
cats
yeah.
don't want to get caught outside smelling, you know?
I don't think Weasel has those standards.
He doesn't have those
No.
things.
You also talked
wants to
before
be
about
clean.
how you tie the motion to the actual character and all those things, and these characters are so diametrically opposed. One is verbal and still because he's trapped, and the other is all motion and nonverbal. Do you find your toolkit as an actor has expanded playing these two characters in the same project that are the opposite in their performance?
I think so. I think that it's really. I mean, one thing that I just have to do is separate them, and I've been learning how to do that. Oddly, it's not ever something I would have imagined I needed to figure out how to do in my career. But like, you know, when I did Guardians of the Galaxy, it was I'm playing Kraglin and playing Rocket, oftentimes on the same day, and so I'm preparing for two different characters and separating them, and so I'm really doing the same thing here. I have to almost look at them as two different jobs, even though they're in the same show, in the same universe. And so, yeah, I think that it's changed my game a little bit. It's changed my relationship with how I go about performing. I'm always trying to get better. I just want to be that actor who, like, every time you see me, it's like I've gotten better. It's what drives me more than anything. So those initial complaints I have about, like, oh, I don't know, there's enough here. There's not enough for me to sink my teeth into. It's like, you know, like from Suicide Squad, obstacles are opportunities. So like I try to really turn that into, like, wait a minute, how do I bring as much depth to these characters as I can? And, you know, they just have less to work with. They don't have as much, they're not as skilled at communication as the other characters are. So how do I do that? And that's a fun challenge.
I have one last question for you. You know, I'm the civilian of the group. I'm not like the comic book expert. However, I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan.
Nice.
I've seen it twice. What is the fandom like for you comparatively? I mean, like the Gilmore Girls army, I would say, versus, you know, the people who know you from this genre world.
The Gilmore Girls fan base is more nuts in some ways. But also it's been around for so long.
Yeah.
I describe Gilmore Girls as the show that never dies.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's great. I hope that it lives forever. But it is weird because you're right, the fan bases are very different.
Yeah.
And I travel. I do a lot of Comic-Cons, which is great because I get to visit a lot of different cities, meet a lot of different people who have different sort of tastes, and I meet a lot of couples who one is a big Gilmore Girls fan, and the other is a big, DC or Marvel fan, and that's really cool. I like it. The rare time when the genders are reversed.
Yeah,
and
I was about to ask.
And
if
it's the wife who's really into the superhero stuff, and it's the husband that's into Gilmore Girls, which
unexpected
happens from time to time.
Yeah.
Sean Gunn, the man of the people.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I like trying to
everyone.
bring people together. It's great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We love Creature Commandos.
Yeah,
here.
this is such a fun show.
Of course. Yeah, thanks. I really, it's really, I'm very grateful to be able to do projects like this that I feel really strongly about. And it's easy to go and promote them and say, hey, watch this, because I think it's really special. And I think it is a really, really great piece of work and an interesting piece of work to come right out of this kind of new incarnation of the DCU. So I'm very excited for people to see it.
Amazing. Well, you guys can all watch Creature Commandos Catch Up. It is streaming on Max right now.
Yep.
We love it. And then you guys can ask questions, wonder whether or not GI Robot has feelings, because he's my favorite. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Thank you. Absolutely.
This year, we are getting the big dog, Superman.
Yeah.
We're getting the film. What do you know about him?
I mean, I know, he's from Krypton / Kansas.
Word.
Boyfriend of Lois Lane.
Boyfriend. Sometimes they're married.
Sometimes, eventually, yeah. I mean, love interest.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. Was he a photographer or is he?
He's a journalist. Like you.
Oh, like me. Thank you.
Actually,
I didn't know if
you
I couldn't
guys
remember.
look very similar. You should cosplay him.
Wait a minute.
Whoa.
Superman?
Who?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of know like the very, very basics. I think I can hang with the new one.
You can
I
hang with
can
it.
make it through. But
Well, that's why we have Coy here.
yeah,
So Coy's going to give us some information, and he's going to break down some comic books that will help you learn more about Superman before this film comes out.
Okay.
So you can, have a more informed look and a more well-rounded look into the character, because I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions of who Superman is, and I think some of these recommendations that we'll hear today will definitely help us out.
oh my God, take it away.
So one of my favorite things in the world, other than reading comics, is introducing people to comics. And I think characters like Superman that are so archetypal, there's no wrong answer, but there's different versions. And these are the versions I personally think that James Gunn is looking to. Some of them we know for a fact, but that overall feel of Superman. So if you have any questions that are in that world or what's in these books, please, because that's the fun.
What do you mean by he's archetypal?
So there's such a broad way to interpret Superman. Like he's an archetype in himself. And I think, Batman's the same way, Wonder Woman's the same way. You can change certain elements and they're still who they are. They're still essential. That's why the Absolute line is so fascinating, because in the new Absolute line, you can change a major part of these characters and they're still true to them, but it's a left or a right turn. So we've had Superman in so many adaptations. We've seen so many different wonderful Superman, but there is a very big difference between Tom Welling's Superman and Christopher Reeve's Superman. And you could argue that the way Henry Cavill plays him might be inherently different than David Cornsweat's, but we won't know until we get there. All we have is the reference points on different writers and different artists' interpretations. But he's such an iconic character, he can be all those things.
Yeah. Like Lord of the Rings is the blueprint of all fantasy.
Sure, yeah.
Superman is the blueprint for like all superheroes. Like anytime you're like, oh, this feels like Superman, because it is. Everyone loves him. Okay, he's mother.
Okay.
Or father.
And father.
And father, and actually a father.
And written approaching 100 years ago, like the late 30s. So we're coming up on a century of this important character.
So are any of the ones that you're going to talk about today, are they that
These are more
old?
modern. Great question, because I made sure these are not only good stories, but approachable stories. So not a lot of continuity, not a lot of tie-ins to anything else you have to have read. They're very pick up and read just these. So the first of which is going to be All-Star Superman. This is a book written by Grant Morrison, illustrated illustrated by Frank Quitely. Frank Quitely's art is very technicolor, very vibrant. The cover here on this Absolute Edition is Superman descending from the sun. This image is actually ironic because the story is Lex Luthor uses the sun to trick Superman and basically poisons him.
Okay.
The very broad Greek myth of flying too close to the sun happens to the man, and he is first superpowered and then slowly depowers. So we talked about with the Christopher Reeve documentary what a humanoid Superman would be. That happens here. So this is a great story of the genius of Lex Luthor, who Kal-El is, who Clark is, who Superman is, and it's some of my favorite romance between Lois and Clark, because she, in this story, it's a brand new jumping on point-ish, so you get the moment where he tells her he's Superman. He has to prove that he's Superman. You get a lot of classic iconic moments.
So we're not starting with like Kansas here.
Kansas is involved, but it's not a fresh start where you have to like go from Superboy to Superman. It's like you can just read this and it all makes sense.
And he's already Superman.
He's already Superman. And he gives Lois this fire outfit so she could do like superhero stuff with her.
Okay.
She looks
and
great.
It's adorable. Yeah. That image also looks like my grandma had that image on a candle in the front.
Are you
right?
serious?
Doesn't that? Well, it wasn't Superman.
Superman.
It was Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah. Okay.
It looks
I was
very
like, damn.
similar. You're like
Your mom,
really
your
in
grandma
it.
was
She's
in.
really 3 generations of DC.
You imagine?
Yeah.
You bring up a great point, though, because I think Superman being written when he was, it was a coping mechanism in a really dark time, like the World War II era of this was someone aspirational. And I think there's a lot of takes on Superman that are inspirational. It's someone we want to be like, but I've always thought Superman should be something we can never achieve but always want to, and he always just wants to be like us.
Right.
And that dichotomy is really important in this book in particular.
Yeah, totally.
What else you got for us?
So, All-Star Superman, my next up is going to be a personal favorite. This is Superman for All Seasons. And not only is this my favorite Superman story maybe ever, it's one of my favorite editions of the book because this feels just art.
Yeah.
Like the way this is made, the love for the medium is here, and this is from Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale wrote The Long Halloween, which, if you've seen The Dark Knight, if you've seen The Batman, it's one of the most formative Bat stories of all time. This one is right up there with that. These two took these very approachable slice of life. You immediately get the character. If you've never read a Batman, you can read Long Halloween. If you've never read a Superman, you can read For All Seasons.
what is it even about?
So this is the Kansas aw shucks. This is going to give you some Americana. This book feels like American Pie. You can smell that amazing American cheese pie combo in every page of this book. So this is going to be a very Clark Kent-based tale. This is going to be him coping with powers. This is going to be him, not quite origin, but definitely early years Superman. And it's going to be a very powered-up Lex Luthor. This is some of the best of him building suits to fight him and all those things. So very human story in an inhuman world.
Is it like Smallville? Do you remember Smallville?
Smallville, yeah. Smallville's deeply rooted
You
in
see,
here.
so
I saw a few episodes of Smallville. I was still kind of like...
That was my Christopher Reeve Superman was Smallville. I was raised on that Superman. To me,
okay.
Michael Rosenbaum is Lex Luthor, like the best he's perfect.
Absolutely.
So the next one I don't have in front of me, but it's called Superman Birthright. It is written by Mark Waid. Mark Waid is one of the current writers on Superman. He is writing Batman and Superman World's Finest, and this is one of the best-selling books in years because it's amazing. It is fun and funny and adventurous. It teams up the OGs, and it is so consistently inventive. Like there's stuff that deals with like dinosaurs and cosmic and fifth wall breaking and absurdity, but also grounded Superman story. So this guy that wrote Birthright was with Lionel Francis Yu, a very beautiful artist, very gritty, sketchy style, so a little bit more intense, and he retold Superman's origin. So Birthright isn't going back to the 30s, and it's not super modernizing, but it's kind of like a gateway between the two. You could read Birthright first and just kind of get the cliff notes, but in a really grounded and visceral way. So Birthright's my favorite retelling of the origin.
Right. I don't think of Superman as like a particularly gritty...
A gritty character?
Yeah, or gritty, like real. I always think of like the perfect kind of American man type of thing.
It's funny that you feel that way, and I think that that's an astute observation. A lot of people feel that way, but actually, Superman's for everyone, not just for America. And for a long time, his tagline was truth, justice, and the American way. But as he's evolved as a character and became a symbol for the world, he changed his tagline, or the comics changed his tagline to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't even know, where did truth, justice, and the American way
It was
come
from the radio show. So the radio show invented kryptonite to give him something to fight against, and then they also also invented Truth, Justice, the American Way in like the 40s. So it was in that like Americana rah-rah, like trying to
Right.
rally. So it made sense for the radio show to like rally people. But I also think as the man of tomorrow, Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow ties more into Superman and the Man of
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, totally.
He got a stigma for something he didn't even make up.
Yeah.
That's actually very on point for Superman.
Yeah, that's too bad.
You know, he's always fighting stereotypes that he didn't even like participate
Right.
in. But I know that's a lot, but that's all we have for you today. We're going to
Thank
slowly
goodness.
feed you more and more. Don't trip. This has been DC Studios Showcase. Thank you all for joining us. You can stream us on Max, you can watch us on Max's YouTube, or you can listen to us anywhere podcasts are available. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the good stuff. But please check us out. Thank you for joining us today and read some comic books. See you guys later.
Bye.